What's up guys, Philip here, and I am back in the garage. Wanted to make a quick video for my guy, Tiago's Fitness. He recommended that I speak briefly, hopefully briefly, on the deadlift and different accessories, ones that I prefer, ones that I am not crazy about. I'm going to touch more on the ones that I prefer because I'm a strong believer that your mileage may vary, everybody is different, and some things may work better for some people than others. But with that being said, I want to give two disclaimers. Number one, I pull conventional exclusively. So if you pull sumo, this video is not really going to apply to you as much. This is going to be more for my conventional pullers. Number two, I wanted to talk about a few things that aren't accessories per se. Well, I guess they are accessories, but they are not specific deadlift accessories. Number one is your back movements, your row type movements, your pull-ups, your lat pull downs, any vertical pull, horizontal pull. Guys, those are huge for the deadlift. And I know that seems obvious, but I have seen people in the past start taking those more seriously and make a ton of progress on their deadlift. If you have a strong back, it is going to help you hold a better position to start and all the way through the movement. And I promise you, there's nothing that sucks more than trying to lock out a deadlift past the knees when you are in a terrible position with your back. It's miserable. So you want to get strong enough to hold yourself in a good position through your middle back, through your lats, through that middle portion of your back, just basically being able to keep yourself very tight through that movement. Now, number two is going to be your legs. Those are huge. Again, on a deadlift, it is more posterior chain. It's a hip hinge movement more so as opposed to like a squat. But your leg strength, your quads specifically, do play a very important role. With me, in my experience, there are a couple different reasons you might put yourself into a stiff leg deadlift right from the beginning of a comp deadlift. Number one is you didn't pack your back tight enough or get yourself into a good tight position. Number two is you did not have the leg strength to physically drive the ground away once you got down into that tight position. And I know that for a fact because I was in the latter camp. Until recently, my legs were not strong enough to physically drive the ground away when I was in the mid sixes. 675 best deadlift so far. With that being said, I've really prioritized my legs. My leg drive from the ground has gotten a lot better, and I'm able to pop anything in the mid sixes off the ground pretty easily, I would say. So it wasn't the grind, it isn't the grind it used to be. So legs, very important. Back, very important. Again, both of those are obvious, but I've seen myself neglect the legs. I've seen others neglect the back and have problems because of them. Now, as far as the accessories are concerned, I have two specific accessories, and these are ones I thought about quite a bit when I was thinking about my own training and what has helped me. Number one, this one's going to be more of a diagnostic tool, but it is going to serve a purpose as far as, neurological adaptations as well, and that is the paused deadlift. Now with the paused deadlift, you can pause it a couple different places. Two of my favorites are right off the ground and right below the knee. Right below the knee being more so if you have lockout problems, right off the ground if you have that initial drive phase, if that is a problem for you. And it has been invaluable for me as a diagnostic tool to show where I might be weak or where I might not be cueing correctly in the movement, really creating that tightness to really drive my body up, drive my hips through the bar once it gets past my knees. Okay, it has been, again, invaluable. And I will push these, I'll push them pretty heavy. I mean, here recently I've pushed paused doubles for a couple of weeks, getting up to 615 for a paused double. So I'll push them very heavy. Sometimes I will do them as back down sets where they are not as heavy, but just to kind of work that technique, work that process in my brain, because a deadlift can be a complicated movement, especially if you haven't done them a lot. So highly recommend those paused deadlifts. The second one is more of a hypertrophy movement, in my opinion. It's one that's really going to specifically hit that posterior chain, and it hits that posterior chain incredibly, in my opinion, and that is the Romanian deadlift. I love the Romanian deadlift. I've done them more than any other accessory for deadlifts, and it's the reason my squat at one point was about 200 pounds, my deadlift was 200 pounds higher than my squat, because I exclusively did Romanians until I was doing 500-pound Romanian, deadlifts for sets of 6. So with that being said, if you have a weak posterior chain, if you are having trouble locking deadlifts out, if you feel like you cannot adequately drive off the ground in some cases, Romanians are very, very helpful. Now, with Romanians, there are a couple of different ways to scale them. If you're new, just do Romanians as normal. But if they start, if you don't really want to add weight to them, there are a couple of different ways. So first of all is cadence of the movement. You can make the eccentric slow. You can make the concentric slow if you want to. So up slow, down slow, whatever you want to do. I recommend down slow if you are doing hypertrophy style movements. Number 2, you can pause right off the ground. Now, easiest way basically to deal with the ground situation is tapping it off the ground. That's going to give you a little rebound. I recommend, if you're not going to pause, stopping just short of the ground so you don't get that little rebound. But if you want to make it even harder, you can pause it right off the ground. That is, again, that's going to be more of an advanced one once you're used to doing Romanians more so. Now, with that being said, the second way you can progress them without adding weight is to elevate yourself. And this is a great one if you, again, are focusing on hypertrophy, because it's going to allow a bigger stretch. It's going to allow a better stress on the muscle without you having to add load to it. So I've enacted these quite a bit, deficit stiff leg deadlifts here in my own training recently, and I've had great success with them, again, in the hip hinge movement. Now, with that being said, don't try that if your hamstrings are not flexible. So that's only if your hamstrings are flexible enough to where you're basically feeling like you could get more range of motion if you're doing a normal one. Now, the third way to scale it without adding weight, and honestly, this is one, if you are not comfortable with Romanians, if you've not done them quite a bit, I would not recommend, starting with this, and that is a snatch grip for a Romanian deadlift. Snatch grip just being your hands are out wider. For me, that's, about 1.5 inches outside of the powerlifting neural marks. Now, with this movement, it's going to serve 2 purposes. Number 1, it's going to feel like your back is being pulled apart. Again, if you try these and you've never done them before, you're probably going to be pretty sore in your upper back the day after. But number 2, it also increases range of motion. So if you do want to increase that range of motion and work your back more without adding any elevation, do a snatch grip. They are very, very tough, but they will help you a lot in my experience, because you're hitting everything you would need for a stronger deadlift except for, your quads. Now, with that being said, again, don't really want to touch on accessories that don't work or are overrated as much, because your mileage may vary, guys. Everybody's different. But I'll give you a couple examples of ones that haven't helped me much. Number 1 would be a heavy good morning. I've never felt like I can adequately load that to really hit my posterior chain without feeling like the bar is going to roll up my traps onto my neck. It's just, I feel like you can accomplish everything and more doing a Romanian deadlift as you can with a good morning. So number 2 would be a heavy hyperextension, a weighted hyperextension. I know my guy Pete Rubish, who I look up to a lot, was huge on these back in the day, but I've tried them, man, they feel like they're going to blow the back of my knees out. And that was just with, 150 pounds added to them. So again, your mileage may vary, but I've never had good use with those. But let me know if you're watching this, what you have found to really help your deadlift, and what you really have found hasn't helped your deadlift that much. What is more trouble than it is worth? I appreciate y'all watching this as always, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.